Welcome to Disaster Preparedness class. I believe this is number 5. I am Ann Forrest. My email's up on the board, and I am glad you're here. Okay, our first topic is communicating after an earthquake. We're going to go through the top priorities after an earthquake. We've done these before, but repetition is really good. What do you do once the shaking stops? You check on people and pets around you. It's a cursory check. You're not going to spend a lot of time doing it, but you want to make sure nobody's currently in danger, that they're not bleeding to death or anything like that. Check on people and pets around you. The next thing you do is control utilities. We talked about that. We're talking about your natural gas. If you have that flowing to your building, if there's a leak, you want to turn it off. We talked about electricity. Kind of depends on whether or not you have a problem. If you don't believe there's a problem with the electricity, leave it on. And the other one is water. We advise you to turn it off regardless after an earthquake until you know that the pipes delivering the water to your house are okay. Turn it off so that nobody in your building accidentally flushes the toilet. All right, I just went through that. Gas, shut it off if you hear a gas leak or if you smell it. Electricity, shut it off only if you see damaged wires. And then water, always shut it off, mostly because it's so easy to turn it off and turn it back on. You want to turn it off, make sure all the pipes bringing water to your house are intact so that you're not bringing contaminated water into your building. And once you know that all the pipes are great, you can turn it back on. So easy peasy. So the next thing you do is make contact with family and friends. It may be your first instinct to make contact, to reach out to your loved ones first, but truly, if you can, check on people and pets around you, control your utilities, and then reach out to loved ones. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how places you can get more information about the situation and what you can do to keep yourself safe. So making contact with family and friends. Amazingly, there's a lot of folks that call 911 after an earthquake to say, was that an earthquake? Just assume it is. Don't call 911. Leave that line open for folks that really, truly need to get through to emergency responders. Your landline might work. There is a misconception that the landlines, that any phone that is tethered to the wall with a cord is a landline, and that's not true. Here in an urban setting, especially one as advanced as Seattle, most of what we consider to be landlines aren't truly landlines. And a landline means that there is a copper wire going from your phone all the way to the phone company. That's a simplified version, but basically that's what needs to happen. And in this day and age, most of the time, that landline, that copper wires is cut and made into a wireless version at some point. So a lot of people think they have landlines. They aren't truly landlines. You would know that if you had a power outage. You would know whether or not your phone worked. So landlines might work after a disaster. Less than 10% of landlines are actually landlines, and don't make calls unless absolutely necessary. So don't pick that phone up unless you need to get hold of someone. Texting is probably your best bet. When you text a message out, it is a very small packet of information that needs to go through cyberspace and hit cell towers and all that other kind of stuff. And it's very likely to get, if anything's going to get through after a disaster, it's going to be a text, more so than a phone call. Also, once you send a text out into cyberspace, there's a chance that even if the system isn't robust enough to deliver your message right now, it may be delivered in a delayed manner. So, a couple minutes, maybe an hour or two later. The good thing about sending a text is that it may continue to have a chance of getting through even after you've hit the go button. Whereas if you're making a phone call, as soon as you hang up that phone, you no longer are capable of contacting your family or friends. So texting is really a good way to reach out. Yeah. Include the date and the time in each text. It'll just help keep everyone current with what's going on. And if your text is delivered late, it would be very helpful to your loved ones to know when it was that you sent that. And make your message count. Put your condition, how are you doing, where you are, and what your plan is. Include all of that information in any text you send out after a disaster. So here's a text of someone that is really just kind of panicking and not saying a whole lot. and it says, oh my God, what was that? Are you okay? Where are you? What do we do now? So lots of excitement, lots of question marks, but zero information are they passing. The only thing the recipient knows from that text is that the person's thumbs worked and they were making sense. They were coherent, but not much else about what their plan is. So here's a much better text. I'm home and I'm fine. The pup is fine. I'm checking on neighbors, but I'm staying put. It's 4:25 p.m. on a Tuesday. You gave your recipient lots of information about how you're doing, what your plan is, and date and time of when you sent that text. Make your text count. The next thing we're going to talk about is an out-of-town contact. This out-of-town contact, so someone that's not involved in the disaster, not living in the impacted area, you want them to be Spokane or further east. You don't want them to be north of us on the coast or south of us on the coast. You want them to be east or Japan, or it doesn't matter where, just not here in the US, really close. Their job is to relay messages between household members. In my situation, our out of town contact is my mother in law in Vegas. And if there was a disaster, all of my family members would send out a group text. So for me, I would send one to my husband and to my son and to my mother-in-law in Vegas. And I would say, I'm at home. The dog's fine. I'm going to stay put. Hope you make it home safe. Love all of you. 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. That's what my text would say. My mother-in-law can watch that text string. And if my son and my husband can respond back to that text, so it's obvious that they got it, then she really just has to stand back and watch what's going on. She really just stays in the background and ensures that all of us can communicate. But if for some reason that text doesn't look like it's making it to my family members on the ground here in Seattle, then she can take that text and forward it down to them. Because sometimes it's easier to get a text out of the city and back into the city than it is across the city. She has several chores, but one of them is just to make sure that we're all communicating here on the ground. And the other thing is she has a to-do list. So what I've asked my mother-in-law to do is to contact my mom, who is not on social media, and just let her know, I heard from Ann, I heard from the family, everybody's okay. They made it through the earthquake okay. And I've also told her to put something on social media. Go to my Facebook page, go to Andrew's Facebook page, and write something on there that says you heard from the family, everybody's okay. If you want updates, this is where you go. You're going to have to go to Facebook. So I have given her a to-do list. This is the things I want her to do. Your to-do list will look very different. Her job is to contact other people who I ask her to and post on social media so that folks know that I'm doing okay. And then anything else you can think of you want your out-of-town contact person to do. They will be thrilled to help. If you chose smartly, they will be thrilled to help because there's nothing else they can do. My mother-in-law in Vegas can't do anything to help us out here in Seattle. I'm going to skip the Safe and Well site from the Red Cross because it is no longer operational. So a really cool project, and this is something the Hub Network did, the Hub Network and the ham radio operators in the city. They took advantage of a system that was built after World War II. I think it was World War II. I doubt it was World War I, but I could be wrong. It is a system where ham radio operators throughout the country monitor certain channels and they can help spread information. Saying to your loved ones that I am safe is really important. And we learned that from a large earthquake in Alaska. Granted, Alaska is really far away from the mainland, but so many folks in Alaska had family members, loved ones here in the lower 48 that they spent a lot of time and energy up in Alaska getting these messages to folks that live in the contiguous United States. So we learned from that, and we learned that it's very important for people to be able to tell their loved ones that they're okay. They will put a lot of time and energy into that. So we harnessed a system that already worked, and we are practicing sending out these I am safe messages. Ham radio operators can send messages to your out-of-town contact or your mother-in-law in Ohio or your sister in Florida or your pastor in New York. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you're sending it to. But ham radio operators can send these messages out over radio waves. So we're not depending on cell phone signal. That's what we're going to practice in this process. This system works even when cell towers are down because it's using ham radio frequencies. They can send a message to your loved one out of town, out of the impacted area via email, which is way cool, text, or snail mail. They will get the message very close to a ham radio operator that lives near your loved one, and that person can either drive over and talk to your loved one. They can throw a note in their mailbox. They can throw a note in the mail postal service and have it mailed that way. So it's a very interesting system, but we're practicing it. So the practice coming up is Sunday, April 7th, and this is on your to-do list. It's on your homework list. So you don't have to write this down, but consider going because I think it'll be super interesting. It starts at 1 o'clock. It's at the American Red Cross building, which is downtownish. Participants will learn to collect and send personal messages to loved ones outside of the impacted area if commercial communication services are down or overwhelmed. There's two sides to this process. The side that frankly I'm on, which is let me help my neighbors, let me help them craft a smart message because we're not sending paragraphs of information. It has to be a fairly concise message. So there's the folks we need to train to help our neighbors craft these very concise messages. And then the other side is the ham radio operators who are literally sending these out via ham radio. I gave the ham radio operators a place to go to think whether or not they have any gear that they should bring to practice this kind of thing. And just FYI, this project, this capability of sending out an I am safe message, this is done off hours. This is not done when the radio waves are needed for urgent matters. I am safe messages are low priority compared to some of the other radio transmissions that need to happen during a disaster. Everybody's welcome to come to the Red Cross Sunday, April 7th and take a look at this system, learn how it works. If you're interested in radios at all, it'll be very fun either to get involved or just kind of look over somebody's shoulder and find out more about WinLink. Strong possibility that your phone gets broken during the disaster or you run out of power, or we suggest writing down important phone numbers. My suggestion, just what I've done with my family, is 3x5 cards, and they are sitting in plastic bags, and they are in cars, they are in the first aid bag, they are in my son's backpack that he carries all the time, tucked around a lot of different places. And you're wanting to put phone numbers on there that you may not be able to recall, either because you don't know them, because you don't need to, because they're stored in your phone, or you're so shaken up by the disaster that you can't recall the phone numbers. So write them down, for heaven's sakes. There's no reason to strain your brain to remember this kind of stuff. And then, as you'll see on that 3x5 card, I include their email address along with the phone number of that out of town contact. Because again, with this system, this I am safe system, if for some reason the text doesn't go through to their phone number, you can send an email to their email address and they'll get that as well. And then just as many neighbors as you can fit on that card, because you never know who you're going to need if you're not home when the disaster happens. Your employer, the pet sitter, a friend that's on your projected walk home. Maybe you want to be able to contact somebody on your way home and just say, hey, if you're around, I could really use, a hug and maybe a place to sit down for a bit and maybe even a place to spend the night as I continue my walk home. So think about what might be smart for you. Write those phone numbers down on something, paper and pen, stick it in a plastic bag, and then forget all about it. Okay. Places to get more information. I've talked about these before, Alert Seattle and Alert King County. If the cell phone towers are working, this is how they will get us information. It's very, very efficient. They've got a lot of messages queued up, ready to go. We need cell phone towers to be up and running for this to work. The local emergency radio station is KIRO 710. If there is kind of a national emergency, this radio station has been tasked with staying up on the radio. They have special equipment, they have special training, they have food and water and cots and whatever. Their job is to stay on the air and keep delivering information. If I was playing with a battery powered radio and trying to figure out what station might be up and running, KIRO 710 is the one to go to. This is one of those crank radios that everybody's so crazy about. And if you can see it down here, put a little piece of tape on your phone and write 7:10 a.m. just as a reminder of where to go to look for information first. What might happen is Cairo 710 is on the air and broadcasting and sharing all the information they can think of. And then the other radio stations will probably amplify that message, or, eventually they'll start broadcasting their own information. But 7:10 a.m. is the place to start. Don't forget about local television. That might be up and running. You might be able to get information there. And then the emergency communication hubs, which we're going to talk about not next week, but I think the week after that. That is a fabulous place to get information. Emergency communication hubs are such elegant, volunteer-led organizations. Can't say enough good things about them. So our second topic is early earthquake warning. We are getting more sophisticated with this system, and I think it's really interesting. When fault lines shift, when earthquakes start, the first thing they send out is called a P wave, and it's very similar to a sound wave. P waves come out first, and they come out really fast. They travel really fast. Animals are more sensitive to P waves than humans are, so they may detect that P wave before us, but it's not going to be days or weeks before we feel it. It's seconds before it's reached our consciousness. First and fast, and they don't cause a lot of the shaking. After the P waves come the S waves, and the S waves are what causes the shaking. Because there's a gap between the P waves and the S waves, that's the gap that we can take advantage of to sense that an earthquake is coming and give people warning. That's that gap in there. In order to sense that an earthquake is coming, we need 4 sensors to detect that quake. So that those sound waves, those P waves, have to hit 4 sensors. And then that's enough information for the system to start working and figure out where the earthquake is, how big is it, and what do we need to do about it? Do we need to tell anybody? Is it big enough to generate an alert? And then who do we tell? Who are the smart people? So it takes 4 sensors to detect a quake. It's about 3 seconds from the sensors feeling that P wave and generating an alert, so pretty fast. And then getting that alert to people is where the lag comes. I'm going to play a video. You'll see a classroom. The classroom starts shaking, and it'll say on the screen, this is the P waves coming through. And it's a little shaking, but it's enough for the kids in the room because they're well trained. It's enough for them to get underneath their desks in this classroom. So you'll see a visual that says, oh, these are the P waves. And then you'll see the S waves, and you can tell the difference in the shaking in the room. And then it'll tell you a little bit more about the early earthquake warning system.
Don't let yourself be convinced to do something that you know is bad, and then even finally just share with them.
With even a few seconds of warning, Shake Alert can save lives and reduce injuries by alerting people to take a protective action such as drop, cover, and hold on. Shake Alert further protects people and infrastructure by triggering automatic actions such as slowing down trains to prevent derailments, opening firehouse doors so they don't jam shut, and closing valves to protect water systems and to stabilize equipment during life-critical situations. How does Shake Alert work? When an earthquake occurs, seismic waves carry energy in all directions away from the epicenter. P waves, similar to sound waves, move quickly through the ground, followed by the slower and generally more damaging S waves and surface waves. Sensors detect the seismic waves and send that information to a Shake Alert processing center, which requires that at least 4 sensors detect the earthquake. If the earthquake fits the right profile, the USGS issues a Shake Alert message. Distribution partners then produce and deliver an alert to people and trigger automated systems. Alert delivery can be before, during, or after shaking from S waves and surface waves. Alerts can be delivered to people through apps designed for cell phones and other wireless devices, over public address systems, TVs and radios, and by FEMA's Wireless Emergency Alert System, WEA, which is also the source of Amber Alerts. For every earthquake, there is a region near the epicenter where alerts will not arrive before shaking begins. That's because close to the epicenter, the P and S waves are too close together, and the shake alert system needs time, often just seconds, to estimate the earthquake's magnitude and shaking levels before issuing a shake alert message. That means that people close to the earthquake epicenter might not get an alert until after the shaking has already started. Those farther away from the epicenter could receive more warning time before shaking arrives.
I think I put the link in your handout in case you want to listen to it again, or have your family member listen to it. Understand how the system works. Make sure that you folks around you understand how it works if it ever goes off. Because the fear is, if we start having earthquakes and we start getting alerts that don't work in the perfect way that people would like for them to work, then they get frustrated and they stop paying attention to the alerts because the system is broken. It never works right, which is not the case. It works well. It's just when you're too close to the epicenter, you're not going to get warning. It's just physically impossible. You could experience warning. Your WIA alerts went off and everything, but there's no shaking. It just means you're too far from the epicenter. Great. Warning, but little shaking. Again, you were too far from the epicenter for you to feel a lot of the shaking. Or the shaking comes and you get the alert afterwards, which is really frustrating. Like, oh, this didn't work. Well, it did work. You were just too close to the epicenter for it to be of much use to you. Be patient with the system. It's as perfect as it can be, but it can't be perfect just because of how it all works. How the alert gets to us. So they talked about Shake Alert, the wireless emergency alert system. Compatible mobile phones can receive geographically targeted text-like messages. It's similar to the Amber Alert system. It's a little different, but it's similar to it. It's very loud and very annoying, just like Amber Alerts are. They sound the same. You're going to get the sound, you're going to feel the vibration, and then you'll get a message on the front of your phone saying there's an earthquake, blah, blah, blah. I'm fairly certain on your homework, there is a link to an article that helps you turn on the WIA, the wireless emergency alerts, on your phone. And I believe you can turn them on only for Shake Alert, but you don't have to have them on for Amber Alerts. I think they're different enough systems that you can subscribe to one and not the other. If anybody goes through it and tells me differently, that'd be great. I want to make sure I'm giving the right information. Anyway, some people get these automatically. Some people have turned them off. So it's a really good idea to go into your phone, figure out if your WIA is on, and if it's not, turn it on. So that's the more generic, that's not the right word, but that's a way to get the information, is Shake Alert. The other one is a commercial app. It's called MyShake. It's the only app capable of delivering early earthquake warnings in Washington state at this time. There will probably be more, but MyShake is here and it's a good one. I think it's a copycat of what they've had in California for a while now. You want both. You want the WIA alert to go off and you want the MyShake app, have them both working for you. They don't necessarily give you the same information. In the future, for the early earthquake warning system, about 65% of the sensors are in place, finished placing them in late 2025-ish. So the system is really robust, but they do have a few last minute kinds of things to do. And then once it's all built out, then it's just kind of maintenance. Drop, cover, and hold on is still the best guidance. I'm going to play this video. There is no sound to this video, but I just want you to watch what folks do, and especially the door to the left of this office space, and just the door swinging, and everybody is so intent on getting out of this building, out of this room, because that's what our lizard brains do. And you really have to fight that lizard brain instinct to run out of the building. Everybody in this office space would have been safer. It doesn't look like anybody got hurt, but you can see how they could have gotten hurt, and it would have been less bad if everybody would have stayed where they were, not left the room, and got under their desks. They all have desks. They should have got under them. So I'm going to play this, and then I think we're done for the night. We as people feel like we are safer outside, and we're just not. I'm really surprised this huge filing cabinet on the side of the room didn't fall, because it looked like it could. So class next week, February 14th at 7 o'clock, we're going to talk about what does make a plan mean? Trying to take that very big concept and that guidance from above of, oh, everybody should make a plan. Let's talk about what it might look like for you. I'll describe my plan for my family. It'll hopefully give you some ideas for yours. And then if you have questions, I'm happy to help you customize your plan for your situation. And then we'll talk about how to put together a get home bag. This is a bag you put in your car, your office, any place where you spend a lot of time, so that if you are away from home when the earthquake hits, you have things with you to make that walk home less difficult. So that's it for tonight. Please revisit. After turning water off at the main, when can you turn back on with some reasonable assurance? I don't know the answer. It is going to be listening to public officials, the folks in charge that say, yep, that was an earthquake. Water seems to be okay. Turn your taps back on. I don't know the system for them to tell us, but that's why having that bottled water available and ready to go is really important. So for that 6 to 10 hours or whatever it takes for the city officials to figure out if there's been breaks in the line, that's when you start drinking that water. Alert Seattle and Alert King County, I talk about them as if they're mobile apps on your phone, but they're not. They're actually websites. They're websites where you can go and you can pick what you want to hear about. Do you want to hear about traffic? Do you want to hear about hazardous material spills? What information do you want those websites to send you? So I would say, instead of, for Alert Seattle and Alert King County, instead of concentrating on what you can do on your phone, get to a computer and go to that website and see if you can't make sure that it's turned on for you. See you next Wednesday.